She was standing in the driveway holding groceries when a black SUV pulled up. 3 men jumped out wearing cheap jackets with HOA enforcement badges stitched on. They looked official, but something about their swagger felt off. One of them pointed at my wife and barked, "You're violating HOA Code 7B, you can't unload here." "Step aside," she laughed nervously, thinking it was some kind of mistake, but then the tallest one shoved the bags out of her hands. Apples rolled across the concrete. I came out of the garage just in time to hear her gasp, "Don't touch me!" One of them leaned close, smirking, and said, "Lady, we can fine you or take you in." "Your husband isn't around, is he?" That's when I froze for a second, because in their eyes I was just another quiet homeowner, an easy target. They had no idea who they were really talking to. My wife looked at me with fear and anger mixed together. She whispered, "They just put their hands on me." I stepped forward slowly, not raising my voice, not making a scene. "You guys really want to play this game on my property?" The leader sneered, pulling a clipboard with a fake-looking seal. "Your property? This is HOA land now. You're just renting the privilege to be here." Inside me, something clicked. My training years ago had taught me patience, but it had also taught me when to strike, and right now every move they made screamed setup. Still, I held back because I needed to see just how far these fake enforcers were willing to go. And in that moment, one of them reached for his radio and said the words that changed everything. "Bring the van around. We'll tow it tonight." The sound of that radio call made my blood boil. Tow what? We had nothing parked illegally. My wife's voice cracked as she shouted, "That's our car! You can't touch it!" But the leader just smirked wider like he'd already won. He leaned close to me, lowering his voice so only I could hear. "Better keep your woman quiet, unless you want a real problem tonight." For a second, I almost laughed. These clowns thought they were running some intimidation act. They had no idea the man standing in front of them had kicked down doors in 3 different countries and dragged brothers out under fire. But I kept my face calm, controlled. I said nothing, just watching. That silence must have bothered him because he shoved his fake badge right against my chest. "You don't get it, do you? We own this neighborhood. You break our rules, you pay." He didn't even notice the security camera blinking red from under my porch light, recording every second. Then, like a bad movie, another SUV pulled up. This one wasn't HOA branded. 2 more men stepped out, bigger, rougher. They opened the back doors and I saw chains and toe straps inside. My wife gasped, backing toward me. "They're not towing, they're taking it." That's when I spoke up, clear and steady. "You boys really think you're in charge here?" The leader smirked. "Yeah, old man. And there's nothing you can do about it." He didn't know. Not yet. But the truth was about to crush him harder than anything he'd ever imagined. The second SUV idled at the curb, headlights blazing straight into our driveway like some kind of interrogation room. The new guys stepped out, heavy boots on concrete, and one of them pulled out bolt cutters. My wife clutched my arm and whispered, "They're going after the gate." The leader waved his hand. "Do it, cut it open. We'll fine him for obstruction and impound the vehicle tonight." His voice carried the arrogance of someone who'd gotten away with this before. That's when I realized this wasn't their first time pulling this scam. I stepped between them and the gate. Calm, steady. "You lay one hand on my property, and you'll regret it." The man with the cutters laughed. "Or what, you'll call the real cops? By the time they show up, your car will be gone and your house locked down. We run this street." For a second, the night was silent except for the ticking of the SUV's engine. My wife's breathing was sharp and panicked beside me. I could feel her fear, but beneath it, her trust. She knew I wasn't going to let this happen. I finally let the words out, slow and sharp. "You boys just picked the wrong driveway. I'm not some retiree you can push around. I'm a Navy SEAL, retired but not rusty." The smirks vanished. The bolt cutters stopped midair, and for the first time I saw doubt flash across their faces. But instead of backing down, the leader forced a laugh, trying to cover the crack in his armor. "SEAL, huh? That's supposed to scare us?" I didn't answer. I just stepped forward, closing the gap between us, letting the silence and the weight of the truth press down on them harder than any threat could. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw my wife lift her phone. She'd been recording the entire time. The leader noticed my wife's phone and snapped his fingers. One of his men lunged toward her, trying to snatch it away. That was their mistake. Before his hand even touched her, I moved. My training wasn't just about strength. It was about precision. A quick step, a twist of his wrist, and the bolt cutters clanged against the concrete. He stumbled back, clutching his arm, eyes wide with shock. "Touch her again," I said quietly, "and you'll regret it more than you already do." The rest of them froze, unsure now if this was still their game. The porch camera was recording. My wife was recording, and I had just shown them I wasn't bluffing. Still, the leader tried to keep control. He puffed his chest and barked, "You think a camera scares us? We are the authority here." That's when my wife spoke up for the first time with fire in her voice. "Authority? You forged that badge and you broke onto our property. This isn't enforcement, it's a crime." The leader's jaw tightened. He pulled out a radio again, muttering something I couldn't catch. But then I heard it. The low growl of another engine, bigger, heavier, coming up the street. I glanced toward the corner and saw headlights cutting through the dark. Another vehicle, but this one didn't look like theirs. It stopped just short of our driveway, and red and blue lights flickered to life on its dash. The HOA enforcers went pale, because the people pulling up weren't part of their little act. They were the real cops. The HOA goons froze like statues when those red and blue lights flashed across my lawn. The SUV doors opened and two uniformed officers stepped out. One hand rested casually on a holster, the other on a flashlight. Their calm confidence was nothing like the fake swagger of the enforcers. The leader tried to recover fast. He waved his fake badge in the air and shouted, "It's okay, officers, we've got this handled." HOA enforcement on site. Homeowners resisting. But the cop didn't even blink. He shined the flashlight right at that stitched-on badge and frowned. "HOA enforcement? Never heard of it." "Sir, step away from the homeowner." The leader's voice cracked for the first time. We have authority here. This man's in violation." I couldn't help it, I smiled. Because the whole time, my porch cam had been streaming live to the neighborhood watch app. Half the block was watching, and now the real law had walked in. My wife stepped forward, holding her phone high. "Officer, I have everything recorded. They shoved me, tried to tow our car, and trespassed on our property. Look at their badges. None of it's real." One officer took the phone, scrolling through the video while the other started checking IDs. The bolt cutter guy was sweating bullets, shifting from foot to foot. The leader still tried to bluff, but his voice was shaking. "They'll regret this. We have connections." The cop cut him off cold. "Yeah, you'll have connections. With a judge." He reached for the cuffs. "You're under arrest for impersonating law enforcement and trespassing." The entire street was silent, watching, until the sound of handcuffs clicking echoed in the night. And then, just as they were being walked toward the squad car, the leader twisted his head and glared at me. "This isn't over. You don't know who you're messing with." I stared him down. "Neither do you," because he still didn't realize. This wasn't just about my wife or my car or even the HOA. I was holding a bigger card, one he'd never see coming. As the officers pushed the cuffed men toward the cruiser, the leader kept thrashing, spitting out threats. "You don't get it. We own this neighborhood. You think two cops can stop us?" His voice echoed through the quiet street, desperate but still trying to sound powerful. I stayed calm, but inside, I knew this was bigger than a few fake badges. These guys weren't just freelancing. They were connected to someone pulling strings behind the HOA. And if that was true, this wasn't their first shakedown. One officer turned to me. "Sir, we'll book them, but you'll need to file a formal statement. HOA disputes can get messy." I nodded, then leaned closer so only he could hear. "This isn't just HOA drama. Check their jackets, inside pocket, right side. They're carrying forged federal IDs." The cop blinked, surprised. "How do you know that?" I met his eyes. "Because I've seen the same operation overseas. Different country, same playbook." His partner searched the jacket and sure enough pulled out a plastic ID with a fake Homeland Security seal. That shifted the whole mood. Now it wasn't trespassing, it was federal crime. The leader's face drained of color. You set us up." I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "No, you set yourself up." I just knew where to look. Behind me, my wife whispered, almost in disbelief, "How did you know all that?" I finally let out the truth I'd been holding back. "Because before I was your husband on this quiet street, I was part of a unit that tracked people who wore fake uniforms and pretended to be authority. And trust me, those guys never walked away free." The officer glanced at me with new respect, almost piecing it together. "You're military?" I gave a small nod. "Navy SEAL, retired." And that's when the real twist began, because the officers weren't the only ones listening. Half the neighborhood had stepped outside, phones in hand, filming everything. My secret was out. Neighbors had been peeking from windows the whole time, but once the truth slipped out, they came pouring into the street. Porch lights flicked on up and down the block. Phones were raised high, recording broadcasting live. Mrs. Dalton from across the street pointed straight at the cuffed men. "That's the same crew that threatened me last month. Said they'd fine me for hanging a flag on my porch." Another neighbor, a young father still in work clothes, shouted, "They took my son's bike." Said it was an obstruction, I never got it back. The crowd grew louder, voices layering one over another. The fake enforcers shrank with every word, their swagger collapsing under the weight of witnesses. The leader tried to bark back, "Shut your mouths. You're all under HOA authority." But no one listened anymore. The real cop cut him off. "Sounds like you've been running a whole scam operation here. Every complaint's more evidence." I looked around at my neighbors, the fear, the anger, the relief, and realized how deep this ran. They hadn't just targeted me. They'd been bleeding the entire street dry. And behind it all, someone higher up had been giving orders. My wife squeezed my hand, her voice low. "This is bigger than them, isn't it?" I nodded. "Yeah, these guys are foot soldiers. The real problem sits in that HOA office." The officer radioed for backup. More sirens wailed in the distance. The neighborhood was buzzing, people whispering, "He's Navy SEAL." He stood up to them. He saved her. But as the cuffs clicked shut tighter on the leader's wrists, he leaned in, hissing one last threat for me alone. "You think this ends with us? The HOA president knows exactly who you are now." And for the first time all night I felt a chill, because he wasn't bluffing. The second wave of squad cars arrived, lights flooding the whole street like a crime scene. Neighbors gathered closer, some cheering, some just relieved. The fake enforcers were shoved into the back of cruisers, but the leader kept twisting, eyes locked on me like he was waiting for something. Then it happened. A sleek black Mercedes pulled up slow, almost too calm for the chaos around it. The crowd went quiet. Out stepped a woman in a sharp suit, heels clicking against the pavement. She didn't look rattled, didn't look surprised. She looked in control. Whispers rippled through the neighbors. "That's her. That's the HOA president." She walked straight past the cops, straight past the neighbors, and stopped a few feet from me. Her smile was thin, rehearsed. "Mr. Collins," she said smoothly, "I heard there's been an unfortunate misunderstanding with my enforcement team." "Misunderstanding?" My wife snapped. "They assaulted me and tried to steal our car." The president didn't even glance at her. She kept her eyes on me like no one else mattered. "You've caused quite a stir tonight. Cameras, police, neighbors talking. You must feel proud." I folded my arms. "I feel disgusted. Your team impersonated law officers and terrorized this street." Finally, a flicker of annoyance cracked her mask. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "Do you think your little Navy SEAL story scares me? I know exactly who you are, and I know things about you your neighbors don't." The words hit like a strike to the chest. My wife's grip tightened on my arm. The neighbors murmured, confused. The cop stepped closer, catching the tension but unsure of the game. And then, with that same fake smile, the president added one line that made the whole block gasp. "You don't own this house. We do."